All right, welcome back, everyone. I have a special guest on. I have Derek Vickers from the MHP Show and Victory Real Estate Group. And yeah, I've been waiting for this one. We kind of had to cancel the other week, but I'm waiting for this because I've never interviewed someone that invests in mobile home parks. So welcome, Derek.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm glad to be the first, Mark. I'm excited to be here. I
Did,
um I love doing these shows, man, and introducing people to the asset class. It's always fun.
yeah, I really don't know what to ask almost. I had to do some research. I had to reach out to some people in some groups that I'm in, and there's questions that they brought up for me. But why don't you start with kind of maybe telling me a little bit about your journey and into real estate and where you started from?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in Virginia, very middle class, blue collar. My family was always a blue collar working, family. And so me growing up, like, my mom's version of working hard was like going to dig a ditch. Like that was the version of working hard. And I hate, look, I did that stuff and I was fine with it, right? But it sucked. And I learned pretty quickly that this was not what I wanted to do. But so I grew up there. None of my family was wealthy. I mean, it's not like we were living under a bridge, okay? But we weren't flying private, like or anything like that, right? So two, drastic differences there. So I grew up there, ended up going to college. Didn't do very well in college. Picked up a lot of bad habits in college. Um, I like to party a lot. That's all, in my opinion, that's all I learned at college. And it was a waste of 4 years. So just FYI
Well,
for
we can
sure.
dig into that later. We can, or maybe another episode.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And then so when I got out of college, I went back to Virginia for a little bit and then realized that I was hanging out with the wrong people still, doing the same things that I was doing in college. And so I had a friend of mine that was like, "Hey man, you can move down here to Florida and you don't have to pay me rent for a couple months until you find a job." So I was like, "Dude," I told my girlfriend, who was my wife at the time, I'm like, "All right, I'm going. Like, we're gonna work this out. We're gonna stay together and we're gonna figure it out. But I'm going to Florida." Because I knew I needed a change. And so it was like a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks later. And my mom even says to today, she's like, "I never believed you were going until the day you were packed and in the car going." And go ahead.
Did your friend bring you down because he thought like you were headed down this path of getting into trouble, or why did he invite you down to Florida?
Yeah, and so I don't know exactly why.
Mhm.
I never asked him that question. But I actually went to college with him, and he was going through some of the same stuff that I was going through, right? So, but I knew I needed a change of environment. Like that's so huge for people. If people are struggling and like you're going down the wrong path or whatever, like changing your environment is huge. Um, it's a big thing. So, anyways, I started like looking at personal development stuff and reading personal development books when I got to Florida. I only had $300 in my pocket, by the way. It might have been a little bit less. It was a tax return that I got from my $9 an hour job that I was working. So that's all the money I had. Um, Now that definitely went, well, really still didn't go that far in 2012 versus 2024, but um, so I got the bright idea to start selling insurance door to door, 100% commission sales, um, because I read a book that said that commission salespeople make more than doctors, attorneys. So I'm like, I'm in. I don't need to be like super smart to do this. I just need to, figure it out. Because I knew I didn't have, I wasn't going to go back to college. I wasn't going to go back to working at the grocery store. I wasn't going to go back to doing this 9 to 5 stuff. And I've always been like I've always been just a rebel. Like what everybody else is doing, like I did not want to do that. Like I just hated that. Um and so I started selling insurance door to door. It was rough. I got crushed. I made 13 grand my first year. Second year, I think I made like 20. But I wasn't quitting. I was not quitting. Um and it was just tough, man. And one day I had to call and ask my And I don't know how long you want me to go into this story, but am I cool to keep going here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm really intrigued by, do you think you were always a salesperson though? Like when you got into insurance, or is that something you learned?
No, I learned that. I was super introverted. Like I tell people now that I was super introverted and was scared to talk to people, and they're like, dude, no way. And I'm like, yeah, way. It was terrifying. So it was like, it was a way for me to have to be forced to get out of my comfort zone and learn how to communicate. Because I don't care who you are, if you cannot communicate, you're never going to be able to create any kind of business, right? Like you need to learn how to communicate and
Yeah,
communicate effectively.
yeah.
And I just threw myself into the fire with that because I saw the opportunity that I could make some money, and I just kept going. I just kept going.
So did the insurance fail, and that's why you got into real estate, or so where did that transition come into play?
Yeah, so I actually ended up doing well in insurance. I ended up building a team of over 100 salespeople. I was like a regional manager of all these people, and we were killing it. And COVID happened, and then our revenue dropped. I mean, Florida was still open pretty much, but like no one wanted to freaking buy insurance that at that time. Like they didn't. And so I was like, man, dude, I got to get this real estate thing going because I had been looking at multifamily and learning how to invest and how to underwrite multifamily, what the cap rate is and what all this stuff is, and like how to back of the napkin math. And, apartments in Orlando were 200 grand a door. I mean, I'm like, man, I can't even like confront raising 5 or $10 million on a deal at that point. And so I had a buddy who was investing in mobile home parks. And I realized that you could get the scale because I didn't want to buy 1 or 2 units. Nothing wrong with that. It's just I didn't really want to do it. And for me, I wanted to get more. And so I could get more units for less. So the barrier to entry to some scale was less. And so I started cold calling and yeah, I ended up falling into a deal that September in 2020, about 5 months after I decided.
So no single family homes, no, so is this strictly multifamily? I mean, mobile home parks is what you started
Hmm.
with.
Yeah.
So walk me through that first deal. So that's, I mean, you got to be scared. I'm scared just buying a regular home and a mobile home park. You don't see too many people investing. Well, especially in Hawaii, but you don't see a lot of people. That's their first start. I mean, we all know Brandon Turner. That's kind of where he got his start. But yeah, walk me through that first deal.
Yeah, I was terrified. I was totally terrified too. So trust me, I was definitely terrified. So how I got into it basically is I got introduced to a guy that lived down the street from me who was an investor. He had invested in mobile home parks, and so he knew the business. And so him and I met and we hit it off. So I started sending him deals basically of like, hey, I found this deal because I was cold calling, right? I was cold calling deals and I was finding stuff. And I would send it to him and I'd be like, "Hey, I underwrote this like this, what do you think of it?" And so him and I started to build a relationship. And then he calls me one day and is like, "Hey, I had this park under contract. My operating partner backed out. We're closing in 10 days or 7 days, whatever it was." And he's like, "Do you want in?" I'm like, "Okay. Um, I'll call you back." And I get off the phone and I'm like, dude, just freaking, you're gonna do it, right? Um, and my apprehension was because I drove by this park and I knew it was a freaking, a hellstorm. Like it was your quintessential trailer park. Like it was a trailer park for sure. And so I got into that deal. I got equity for operating the deal. And so the day we closed, I had to go to the property and hand out notices and stuff. And it was terrifying. I was terrified. I was literally super nervous going there because I didn't know what was going to happen. But that's how I got into the first deal. You want me to talk about the first deal and how it went?
Well, I mean, okay, do you still have that mobile home park?
Yes. Yes.
And you would say maybe what kind of returns have you got on that so far?
Well, we refinanced it twice. We bought it for 425K. The first refinance, it reappraised for 175, and that was less than a year later. So we crushed it on that deal.
And okay, since we're on this refinance, how do you get financing for these type of properties?
So we paid cash for it initially, but after it's
Okay.
stabilized and you got all your tenants paying lot rent only, not lot rent and trailer rent, then banks will finance that stuff.
Oh, like Bank of America, like
Well, no, not
traditional
like no, Bank of
debt.
America doesn't really do much commercial anyways, I don't think.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean like you
Okay.
local banks, credit unions. There are some larger banks that do it. Once you get some scale, you can do larger banks and get into some agency debt too.
So would you say like traditionally you raise capital, buy it all cash, get it stabilized, and then you'd finance out of it? Is that kind of the game plan?
No, no, no. We can get financing going in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I don't seem to hear as much about mobile home parks now. It seems like it's kind of lost its luster. It was really big. Like I said, Brandon Turner kind of mentioned it quite a bit. So do you see like that's your opportunity though? Like maybe the market is not as attractive for a lot of people now, but that's like you're saying, there's a lot of deals out there for yourself.
Yeah, I mean it definitely there's less people in this asset class, but there is more people getting into the asset class because they see the stability of the cash flow. So like a mobile home park versus, a multifamily apartment building. And I love multifamily. I'll probably buy multifamily at some point. But if I've got a 300 unit apartment complex, your occupancy, I don't know, what do you underwrite that at? Maybe 90 or 95% throughout the year. Um, we're the only asset class that can be at 100% because the tenants they stay there. So once it's stabilized, right? Stabilized meaning all the tenants are paying lot rent only. They own the home, you don't own the home, then it's pretty stable. Like and so I think people are seeing that. Bigger groups are seeing that. Some larger institutional investors are seeing that. But there still is opportunity because, Mark, this business is still fragmented. Like it's a very, um, it's it's mom and pop, right? There's still a lot of mom and pop, and even a lot of people that bought deals in the last few years are still sort of like mom and pop new operators that came in, and there's still a lot of opportunity out there.
So do you see the opportunities as far as maybe bringing technology to it? Because I hear a lot of people in self storage, like you're saying, there's a lot of mom and pop owners, and that's where they see the value add is where they can bring technology to this, where it's been that they collect you know cash or checks and whatnot. It's not all automated. Is that the same for mobile home parks?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mean, there's a guy I've been working on the deal for, since 2021. You go into at his park in the office on sometime around the first of the month, and he's got stacks of cash in there. Right? So there is an opportunity to do that because you see that a lot, to go in and get everybody paying online or cash pay, which is a system through Rent Manager where they can actually go pay at Walmart and then they can pay in whatever they want, but it goes into your system as being like an online payment. So yeah, you can go in and automate and systematize stuff and make it more efficient because it's a very inefficient business.
So what would you say is like maybe the biggest misconception with mobile home parks? I hear a lot of people, they kind of maybe look at it as like Section 8. Section 8 gets a bad reputation a lot of times. So what would be the misconception maybe with mobile home parks?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think it's just, you have 8 Mile, Eminem, the Trailer Park Boys, right? So I think people think of that. They think of that stuff and they think of the trailer park because they know the one in their town, the dump trailer park that everybody knows. They're like, "Oh my God, don't go in there." But it's affordable living. Like go to Tampa, Florida and try to rent a 2 bedroom apartment. And if it's less than $2,000, I know you're in the hood. I know you're not in a good area. And this is the last leg of affordable housing because like developers can't it's hard for a developer to go into, if we're talking about Tampa, to go into Tampa and build something they can charge $1,000 a month. Like, you can't do that, right? The numbers don't work. Um, and so I just think there's a misconception because not everybody, like, we have great tenants in our parks. They're working class people. They go to work every day. They don't bother anybody. They're just people that want to live their lives. They don't need a lot. And yeah, there's some knuckleheads in there for sure that you have to kind of figure out. But for the most part, it's just great people, and it's affordable living.
So what would be like maybe the biggest challenge in evaluating mobile home parks or a deal?
Yeah, that's a great question because there's so many different factors of it. I mean, I think the most difficult thing is just for people being able to understand if a deal is good or not, because there's different factors. There may be vacant lots there. There may be homes that are vacant. There may be abandoned homes, and you have to figure out like how to underwrite those, right? And this is the whole thing. I didn't even like, we didn't even tee this up, but I do have a webinar coming up next Thursday on underwriting, mobile home park underwriting deal secrets, where we're going to be going over this stuff. But you have to understand like what is that value, right? And what can you get in lot rent in the area? And what you can get in lot rent may not be what mom and pop have been charging for the last 50 years down the street. So that may not be a fair judgment of lot rent, right? So that, and there's also different utilities, like you've got well and septic systems on parks. You have some wastewater treatment plants. So those sometimes will bring a higher expense ratio because you have to pay someone to come in and operate that stuff versus a park that's on city water and city sewer could be less headache, but maybe you're paying for that bill and not the tenant. So there's a value add opportunity. You can go in and bill that back. So the easiest way that I would say to do is that you have to like figure out what you want first as a deal. You have to figure out like, hey, like what's your business plan that works? And then it's easier to underwrite, right? Because I know I'm going to go into a park and bill back for water and sewer every time. So I factor that in my underwriting, right? I know that I'm going to go in and convert all the rental units to just lot rent. So I can do that in my underwriting, right? I know that I'm not going to really account or add much value to vacant lots in my underwriting because it's difficult to bring homes in. I'm just not going to put a lot of value in that because I look at that as gravy money. I want the deal to work without that. And then if I bring in four homes, it's going to explode the value.
So would you say like mobile home parks, is it more for like the return, like the cash flow, or how do they appreciate? Do they appreciate well?
Yes, they appreciate very well, and especially recently. And if you're in great markets, I like to buy in great markets. Like I don't like to buy in the middle of nowhere. You can, and people get great cash flowing deals in those areas, but then you give up some on the appreciation, and selling houses is harder, and other things can be harder. But yes, they do appreciate for sure because if you look at it, commercial is based on the factor of your NOI, right? So if your NOI is always going up, which if you're in hot markets, your NOI is always going to be going up because you're trailing apartment rent, remember? And even if apartments are oversupplied in the area and rents level out, you're still at that affordability range and you're still going to be coming up, right? So as long as you're increasing NOI, the value of these things is going to go up. And then depending on what interest rates do, if interest rates stay where they are now in Florida, we can probably exit at a 7 cap. If rates go down again, maybe we can exit at a 6 or a 5.5 cap or something if interest rates go really low again. But I think to answer your question, they do appreciate because it's a factor of NOI and rent.
Yeah, I saw one of your episodes on the MHP show, and your guest, you guys are talking about growth markets. So it sounds like that's what you like to focus on and looking for markets that have a lot of growth potential.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it just makes things a lot easier. You can make mistakes and still be fine in these high growth markets because it's just, and I like we've actually ventured outside in some like other people would consider some of these markets like really, really great markets, and they are, but they're still not like the high growth markets, and stuff is slower. Your selling houses is slower. Your rent growth is a bit slower. Um, things are just more slow, right? And if you want to go in and create a lot of value as fast as possible, obviously the growth markets is just, and think about it. If you're out raising money for a deal and you're like, "Hey, investors, I got a deal in, you know, um, Brunson, Mississippi." Oh, great. Great. Oh no, guys, I got a deal in Tampa, Florida. Oh, okay. Right. So that's different. So like that, and then on your exit, more people want to buy in Tampa than they want to do in Brunson, Mississippi. Like I don't even know if that's a real place. I'm just making it up. But you get the point.
Exactly. Yeah. So this will lead me to my next question, though, and I found this super interesting on one of your, I believe it was on Instagram. I saw, you recommend for people starting to invest close to themselves. But why is that?
Yeah, and I do recommend this, and there are people that don't do it, right? So just take this for what it is. This is just my opinion on it because in the beginning, buying a turnkey property where you don't need to be there is going to be a little bit more difficult because it's going to be harder for you to make sense of. If you still work a 9 to 5 or whatever, and you have a savings and your wife, and you're like, hey, we're going to buy this deal, it's going to be 5% cash flow in the first year. Like you're gonna be like, oh, why am I doing this? I need more. So then you're like, okay, yeah, I need more. So you find the deal that's more, but it requires some heavy lifting, right? And if you're in Hawaii and you're buying that park in Texas, that's a pretty long flight, probably 8 hours or something, right? 7 or 8 hours, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And so you can't get there, right? So the first deal that we bought was like 15 minutes from my insurance office. So I could dress down and then go straight to the park every single day because it was a heavy lift, right? And if you want those parks to create a lot of value, you're going to have to do some heavy lifting. You're going to have to get your hands dirty. And so I just recommend that being close because if you're buying this park, you're not going to be able to afford to hire anybody to manage it. You're just not.
Since you brought that up too, insurance, are you still doing insurance? And I keep hearing that in Florida, insurance is such a big issue. Is that the same with mobile home parks?
Yeah, so look, I'm not in insurance anymore, so I can just dog the insurance industry right now. Um, no, so like if you have a park that's all tenant-owned homes, you're generally only getting like liability insurance if somebody slips and falls or something. So that hasn't really been an issue. If banks like we're working with a lender now that they require business interruption insurance, some do and some don't. Like historically, we haven't had to have that, but that can provide substantial increases in your expenses that can hurt your NOI. But you just fight through it. I mean, it just makes the first year a little bit more difficult, but then, you're growing your NOI through rent, right? Rent and lowering expenses that you're going to be able to just, take that cost. So
That's
it could be a problem, but like it's more so on multifamily and stuff. Because I actually interviewed a guy on my podcast, an insurance guy today on my podcast. He specifically specializes in mobile home parks, and he was just talking about this, how stuff is just so much more expensive. Something that used to cost 10 grand to fix is now 20. So it's jacking up these prices, and like, what do you do about it?
Yes, I was gonna say, for the insurance side, I mean, do you feel like um it was just something that was kind of put on the back burner for a while in Florida and only now is really catching up? Like you're saying, all of a sudden prices are just going through the roof, and now it's being more brought to the forefront of things and just what's going on in Florida.
What do you mean as far as like the
I feel like, so like even in Hawaii, had the Lahaina fires, people's
mm,
insurance, they kind of whether they let it lapse or they didn't update it for coverage. They don't have policies that are going to fulfill what they need for the properties now because values have gone up. So people were just it was just an afterthought in a sense. But
Mm.
now people are seeing so much, natural disasters out there. The same thing with the line of fire. Insurance are just going through the roof now. Is that kind of what's going on in Florida, you think?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question because I actually asked the insurance expert on my podcast today this question, and he said it's more attributed to the higher increase of construction costs versus the
Mm.
storms. Like because Florida's always been at risk of storms, the Midwest has always been at risk of hurricanes. Out on the West Coast, you got fires. He said fires are actually have been more um, prevalent than the other stuff, tornadoes and hurricanes. But yeah, I do get your point. Like with the weather that's been happening, I guess we can blame it on global warming if we want. Like, don't even get me started.
Yeah.
Um, but it could be a part of that where maybe there could be an agenda or something to where, hey, let's say the insurance costs. Yeah, you get what I'm saying. But um, to answer your question,
No, yeah. This may be a silly question also, but as far as I guess landlord tenant laws and things like that, does that fall under the same category for like mobile homes?
yeah. So it differs by state. So in Florida, they have something that's called Chapter 723. It's actually a whole statute that actually governs mobile home parks, but it's tenant owned. If
Hmm.
I'm renting a unit, like an apartment, then that falls into just the basic statute on apartments, right? But this, if I have tenants that own their home and they're just paying the lot, then it all falls into Chapter 723. So yes, it is different. You have to give longer. There's your notices that you send out to tenants are longer. Like the day, it's not a 3 day notice, it's got to be five, and then something else has got to be 10 days. So there are different laws. Like if there's a tenant, selling drugs out of a trailer and they own their home, it's harder to get them out for sure than if they rented.
Oh,
Um, but if it's a non-payment case, like, the judges in Florida, it's pretty black and white. Hey, you haven't paid your rent. Um, you know, so the landlord tenant laws, they are it's balanced, but it's definitely friendly. Like Florida doesn't have anything crazy that like if you can't pay your rent, like I don't know what you want me to do. What you want me to do? We'll try to work with people, right? We absolutely try to work with people, but if you can't pay your rent, you can't pay your rent. And Florida laws, support that.
all right. So why don't you kind of fill me in a little bit? So what is your total, portfolio size looks like right now? And are you working on any deals going on right now?
Yeah, so we have 3 deals in the pipeline now. That'll put me at over 40 parks that I'm involved with. And yeah, we got 3 deals in the pipeline now. We're closing them in a few weeks. So we got a few weeks before closing. It gets a little wild before then. It's just a lot of moving parts, but we're looking to expand. I think there's going to be some opportunity in the market from various aspects, is because we've got sellers that were up here in 2023 because they got drunk in 2021 from all the brokers calling them and telling them, "Hey, I can sell your property at a 3.5 cap," and like so they're off, at the Eiffel Tower at a 5-star Michelin star restaurant, right? And now they can't get that, right? Because rates are 8%. And so we're seeing some capitulation from the seller coming down a little bit. And then we've actually been able to come up a little bit. So we're closer within striking distance. Because really, really, Mark, if somebody wants to sell, they're gonna have to lower the freaking price. Like, I don't know what you want to do. Like, if a true motivated, like, I think it's easier to see motivated sellers now because if they will be reasonable now, but if they're just like, yeah, I'll sell for, it's a 4.5 cap. I'm like, okay, well, this doesn't work. You're not a real seller.
Do you see a lot of like seller finance or creative finance opportunities in mobile home parks?
Yeah, so there are like one of the deals we have now is seller financing. We've got 30% down, 5% interest, interest only for the first year or two. So pretty good terms. Yeah, there are opportunities for that. Um, if you're only, I think I got asked this. I did a Q&A on Facebook. I think it was last week or maybe the week before. But we're talking about 0% down deals, and typically the 0% down deals that I've seen are just dogs. Like it's a lot of work, right? You're not going to get this nice park at 0% down. Maybe you can, maybe there's a unicorn. There are opportunities for creative financing for sure. But I wouldn't bank your business model on that.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's what everyone's getting caught up in that on social media, right? Like no zero down and seller finance, creative finance. But like you're saying, right? Maybe if you have some time in the game or you've been in it for a while, it's easier to take on those projects. But when you're first getting started, right, you kind of want those base hits, So how would you break down like maybe a small, like what is the size of a small mobile home park? What is a large, like what is the breakdown for that?
Well, I mean, you can get parks down to 5 lots, 10 lots, 15 lots, 20
Oh,
lots. You can get small ones. Like we even have some small ones. And then you can get them all the way up to 300. There's parks that have 1,000 units in them. Not many, but there are.
dang, that
Yeah.
big, huh? That's like the whole island almost in Hawaii. I mean,
Yeah, maybe.
yeah. Well, I love it. So tell me about the whole podcast, your social media. What are you trying to do on that side of things?
Yeah, so the podcast, we do a show every week. It's an MHP show. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and all that. And I mean, I just love like interviewing other people in the industry and educating people about the industry, because it is a great asset class, for one. And then the more smart people we get into the business, the more of these properties that we can go in and turn around, right? Because they're actually demolishing more mobile home parks every year than they're building. And a lot of these mobile home parks in great locations, they're not the highest and best use. So the cities hate them. And as long as you have sellers that they don't care and they're letting these parks run into the ground, that's less, it's just killing affordable housing. Like there's just going to be less and less affordable housing, right? And then that's another big issue. So I enjoy doing that. Um, and then I've just always loved giving value back because I feel like if I outflow, I'm gonna inflow. And so I get inflow can be many things. It can be like, it can be like I went to dinner the other night and there was a guy there. He's like, Derek, man. Dude, I've never met you in person. It's just freaking great to meet you, dude. But I didn't know the guy, I'd never seen him before, but it was like he knew me. And I think that's pretty cool if you can have an impact on people like that. And obviously we actually get investors that listen to the show. People are like, yeah, I love mobile home parks. Like, I this sounds like a little bit too much work for me. I got a 9 to 5 job. So Derek, you've you've been in the trenches. You've done everything, so we trust you to actually go in and turn these things around, and we don't have to deal with it. We don't have to do anything, right? You just, we get a check, you get a check from you, and we multiply your money, right? So it's like passive income, of course. We like to talk about passive income, creating generational wealth. Well, people that make $400,000 a year, like, I don't know if I would give that up. I'd probably stay in that, right? And
Yeah.
then, start shoving that money off to the side. So that's what we do with the podcast and the educational stuff, but also I do we have some coaching programs that we have that we actually mentor people in buying their first park. And I've always just gotten enjoyment out of that. Like for what we sell that for, my time is way more valuable than that. Um, so go ahead, Mark.
No, no,
Sorry.
I love that. And I was just gonna say, so like someone that maybe just wants to get started, looking deeper into mobile home parks, you mentioned the webinar. Is that probably a good place for them to start looking at how to evaluate deals? And so talk about your webinar coming up.
Yeah, the webinar coming up is going to be sick because like I'm literally going to be going through, deals and like, hey, this is how I look at deals. And it's going to teach you that because if you get online and start looking at deals, you're going to be like, "Oh, what's this?" this park, there's two RV lots. How do I look at that? How do I factor that into the price? And so a lot of that, when people look at that, they can be like, okay, I'm done. I'm done with this asset class. But you have to understand how to underwrite deals, right? Or otherwise you're never going to buy anything, right? You have to be able to confidently. That's the most, like, people can underwrite deals, but they can't confidently say, "Hey, I know this is a good deal." And one of the reasons why that is Mark, because they don't know their buy box. Like, there's so many different reasons you could buy for. Like, you may have a guy that's, they make a bunch of passive income and other stuff, and they're like, I don't really care. I'm just buying to do for bonus depreciation or something, right? And so that's a different, like, they're looking for a different deal than the guy who's like, hey, I need cash flow, or somebody who's like, yeah, I like a little bit of cash flow, but I want the bang on the end too. So you have to, like, the first step is like deciding that. And so we're going to talk about that in the webinar, and then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of underwriting.
I love that. I think I saw it on your Instagram page, but do you know the date, the time, and everything where people can join it?
Yeah, so it'll be I think it's the 27th. Yes, it's the 27th. It's next Thursday at 7 o'clock. You can register. I think I'll get Annalisa to send you the links.
Okay.
And so we can put that on the show, but it's going to be awesome. I think we may have it live on our Facebook group too. If you Park Investing Pros on Facebook, we'll have it live there as well.
All right. So yeah, my guest, go check it out. If not, I think I saw it on his Instagram, so you can go check it out there. But yeah, if you're interested in mobile home parks, check it out, evaluate some deals, get some inside information, and go check out, MHP show. Check out the podcast. Like I said, there's a lot of great guests that come on. I love how you guys talking about, like you said, growth markets, invest close to you. I think that's the hard part, right? A lot of times people don't know where to start. And it's
Yeah.
like yourself, myself, we're trying to just help people get their foot in the door, whether it's single family homes, whether it's mobile home parks, whether it's short term rentals, but be around people that are doing it. And I love that. So, yeah. So just remind everyone, what platforms are you on? Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah, we're on all of them. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, X. Um, am I forgetting one? Let's see.
But your Facebook, it's a private group or you have a group there or
Yeah, so we have a private group there. You just have to, click to join. It's Park Investing Pros on Facebook, and then I'm Derek Vickers on Facebook, and then YouTube as well. We're on YouTube as well.
yeah, I love it, man. I love what you're doing. We'll get you back on. We can dig deeper into climate change and some other stuff and COVID and all that other good stuff, and we can make that a special show.
Yeah, we'll make that a special show, and we probably couldn't post that on YouTube or something, because then we'd be freaking shadow banned.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks for doing this, man. This was a lot of fun. I got a lot of great information. I know there's a lot of people that are gonna love this and great breakdown. But yeah, we'll do it again, man.
Yeah, let's do it, Mark. Thanks
All
for
right,
having
man.
me
Thanks,
on.
man. Bye.